All right, peace, world. It's Kimon Freeman, Angry Black Man Therapy, representing We Act Radio. We're here broadcasting live in the Legacy Studios in Washington, D.C., statehood delegate candidate. And it is one of the greatest honors in doing our broadcast at We Act Radio, meeting people, talking to people of like mind, because unfortunately in America, as far as talk radio goes, 92% of all talk radio platforms are conservative, right-wing, underwritten, and only 8% are progressive talk radio. Right. And so We Act Radio is proud to be part of that 8%, and those people who are part of our platform comprising that 8% are some of the best people alive today in America. And some of those people have done great things that have contributed to improving the political stance in this city and around the world. And one of those people here is joining me, and this is U.S. Senator Michael D. Brown.
Well, thanks. It's so great to see you, Kimon.
Always a pleasure.
I appreciate what you do, and you know, I have a podcast too, which plays on We Act, and you're absolutely right. There's so few of us out there that are speaking truth to power, and it's unfortunate. You know, people go down these rabbit holes, and they believe what they hear, and very often it's not the truth. So I'm glad there's a few truth tellers out there still banging the drum and letting people know that you know, we still have a lot of work to do in this country.
Absolutely, and let's acknowledge some of the work that has been done. U.S. Senator Michael Brown, for those who do not know, D.C. has no statehood, and this is one of our champions for statehood. He has been a U.S. Senator in Washington, D.C. since 2007, and for those who are unfamiliar, a shadow senator, Brown receives no pay from the government. He receives no budget from the government and cannot vote on matters before the Senate. And while he does not have an office on the Capitol, he does have an office building here in the Wilson Building that the D.C. government provides for him. That's the John A. Wilson Building right across from Freedom Plaza on Pennsylvania Avenue. He lobbies the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives on behalf of citizens, of the unrepresented citizens of the District of Columbia, in their attempt to gain full representation in Congress, self-determination, and eventually admittance to the Union as a state. And he is also celebrating his 75th birthday.
71st. Don't make me any older than I am. Come on.
You know, you're still a young man.
Oh, I'm trying. Unfortunately, that's not true.
And I told you this off air to just give you some comfort in the aging process, and hopefully you have the same warm, fuzzy feeling that it has given to me. This is from Roy Ayers. Roy Ayers, the musician, the xylophone. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to call him jazz, neo soul, but I would say the great Roy Ayers. He was performing at Fort DuPont Amphitheater here in Washington, D.C., and it was his 60th birthday. And he said that, you know, when I was 20, I thought 30 was old. When I was 30, I thought 40 is old. He said, now that I'm 60, let me tell you, old is dead, young is alive. And if you drink your water and stay away from toxic people, you'll stay young a long time. And he's older than Eleanor Holmes Norton, so he should know a thing or two about a thing or two.
Well, I am a percussionist, and I love this guy. But unfortunately, I'm in politics, so staying away from toxic people is a very, very hard thing to do. Politics, unfortunately, attracts toxic people.
Yeah, especially when politics, and there's 92% of them are right-wing MAGA types. Now, you're on your way to Chicago for the Democratic National Convention.
I am.
This is going to be your last one in your official
capacity.
Probably
my last one. You're right. And I've been at 13 consecutive ones. The first one was for the first guy I worked for, who was Jimmy Carter.
My favorite POTUS.
Yeah, a great man.
For those who don't know, Jimmy Carter had solar-powered windows, panels on the rooftop of the White House in '79.
You did. And he's still hanging in there, you know.
Still here.
He's still here.
Bless him.
And we had a guest on our show, I think last year, who was a journalist, covered him at the White House. And she had just been to his Sunday school class. He was still teaching Sunday school well into his 90s. An amazing man who never stopped giving back. Understood that the only way to truly receive is to give.
Yeah, he was volunteering to his 80s, building houses and stuff.
Building houses for poor people.
Tried to do peace with the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yes, he did.
Jimmy Carter's a humanitarian.
He is a great humanitarian.
Well, on the subject, he also said that America is not a democracy; it's an oligarchy. How do you feel about that?
Well, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that democracy was an experiment. It was put together by a handful of people that read a handful of books. A few things that Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, the French and philosophers, the great French philosophers like Rousseau and Hobbes and Locke, and they put together these books that put forth the idea that people should run the government and not kings and queens, and it was revolutionary at the time, and they started this country, and they didn't know what was going to happen, and that's one of the problems that DC has. They didn't understand what the government was going to be, and that the federal government would be powerful, so they made DC. There was a riot in Philadelphia when Congress met at Carpenter's Hall, which they used to do. They would meet in different cities. And so when they came to Washington, decided to make Washington the capital, Madison said, we need to be in control of whatever jurisdiction we occupy. And so they took total control of the District of Columbia, and they still have total control of the District of Columbia. But that's it. They didn't understand what this would become. And what it's become is in some ways a really beautiful thing, but in other ways, not so much. And we have to work on the other. I love America. I'm a high school dropout who was orphaned as a child, pretty much raised myself, put myself through, dropped out of high school, then got an equivalency diploma, put myself through community college, and then a four-year college, and then graduate school. But, for a kid from Newark, New Jersey, who started out with nothing, I started out with not a dime in the bank, and I became a millionaire, and I became a senator. Only in America can you do that. But that's not But the one thing we have to be aware of is that's not available for everybody. It really isn't. I understand because I grew up in a poor neighborhood. I understand all the advantages I had just by being white. And just by being male, I had some woman, I might not have made it. And if I had been a black person, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have made it the way I made it.
Coming out of Brick City, shout out to Ras Baraka, the current mayor of Newark, New Jersey. And he is actually running for governor of New Jersey. I think it's next year.
Oh, is that right?
Election.
He's a well-loved mayor.
What do you think DC needs to do in terms of going forward? Because you have done all you can to get us to move to a better place, to a higher level. I wanted to save this question when we have your democratically elect senator that's going to be trying to fill your shoes come January, if he gets past the November election, because you were so eloquent in pointing out that he hasn't been elected. He just won a Democratic
there are
primary.
Some independents running.
And it's an independent running, like an independent challenging Democratic incumbent now. So,
and we know that the incumbency as a Democrat in the District of Columbia means everything. It really does.
Yes, it does. But all things change, doesn't it?
Yeah, all things change. And
it's the first time for everything.
And we've seen it, when Alaska and Hawaii became states, they came in together because, and this very often happens, because they said that Hawaii would never elect a Democrat and Alaska would never elect a Republican. And I can't remember the last time Alaska elected a Democrat or Hawaii elected a Republican. They completely flipped from what they were in the 1950s. So, yes, the things change.
Yeah.
And you have to, that's part of democracy, is that you have to push the envelope. You have to push for change. It's a requirement in keeping our government healthy and strong. Really.
So my question is, and I'm glad you said that, because we saw so many things changed in our lifetime. And
So many things.
I mean, I remember when Dan Snyder says, "We'll never change the Redskins' name." And you could put it in all caps. And now he's become a meme. So when people say capping, they talk about it all caps. Coming from that, because he eventually had to change the name and sell the team. How about that? You know, but
Thank God.
to see Joe Biden step down and pass the baton,
Amazing.
was inspirational, because he's saying that it's a time for a new generation, and
it was really a great sacrifice. And what people have to understand about that is it's not like he stepped out of the way because he was the presumptive nominee. He was the nominee. Mm-hmm. He had enough delegates to become the nominee, and there was nothing they could do to stop him from getting the nomination. The only thing that could stop him is if he agreed to step down, and he did, and it was magnanimous, and he did it for America. And the guy he's running, that Kamala Harris is now running against, wouldn't have done that in 1,000 years. So this was a great American, and that's the beautiful thing about politics. There's still a lot of people in this country that care about this country and care about what it becomes and care about who we are, and understand that that things like George Floyd were not an aberration, but they were unfortunately a regular occurrence, and we need to do something about those things, and we need to hold on to the things that are great about America and change the things that aren't, and we can do that. We can do that in a democracy. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. You can't do that if Vladimir Putin is the head of your country. You can only do that in a democracy. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to try. And the older you get, the more you want to pass the good things that have happened to you along.
And that's one of the things I admire about you, because, I have never heard you say self-made. I hear that all the time from billionaires. I'm self-made. I'm like, yeah, right. Like Elon Musk was born with an emerald spoon in his butt. So in apartheid South Africa, like, how you self-made, Peter Thiel, he was able to invest $180 million before PayPal turned a profit. Who's going to get $180 million wiggle room to figure it out?
Right.
So it's not self-made, but you, sir, always wanted to credit people who helped you along the way.
Oh my God.
So let's back up a little bit from
many people
the orphan who became the millionaire, who became the senator. Who helped you along the way as we give you your flowers today?
I threw my life away when I was a teenager, and my sister stepped in and said, "No, you're not going to fail. No, I had an older sister who said, if you fail, it's going to be over my dead body. You're just not going to do it." And she just held on to me so tight. And after a while, I realized that, man, if she was willing to fight for me, then I had to be willing to fight for myself. And I got on it. She was brilliant. She created a plan to get me back into school and get me to care about college and about improving my life and moving forward. I only have 2 siblings. My brother was an F-111 pilot who went on to get a doctorate degree and become president of the #1 community college in America. My sister was a woman that had a law degree, then had a master's degree on top of the law degree, and became a partner in one of the biggest law firms in Washington, D.C., when she was in her early 30s. Mm-hmm. So, I come from a family where my siblings just achieved and achieved and achieved, and they instilled that in me, and they put pressure on me, and they helped me all along the way every time I needed help. I became a millionaire because my sister loaned me $800 to start a business. And actually, when I went to her and I got the $800, I was in my 30s, and she said, "This is not a loan." She said, "This is a gift." She goes, "But it's the last gift I'm giving you. You stand on your own 2 feet from now on. You take this $800 and you do what you can do with it. But if it doesn't work out, pal, you find another way to do it." So there was a lot of tough love, and they made me stand up and take account of who I was and move forward. And that's why I think my whole adult life, when you think about this job that I've had for 18 years where I don't actually get paid or and before that I was an ANC commissioner and head of my Citizens Association for 10 years and a block captain on the neighborhood watch and all this stuff. I think my whole adult life has been an attempt to give back to all the people that gave to me, many of whom didn't make it to see me become successful.
Now, how did you turn $800 into your successful business?
I started a business. I got a job, believe it or not, I got a job running, I worked for the Democratic National Committee for several years. Then I got a job running one of the most important public interest groups in Washington, D.C. I was their first administrator. I hated working in public interest. I was really realized at that point that politics is where I wanted to be. So I left the job, and I didn't have a job. And I borrowed money from my sister to pay the rent, and somebody called me on the phone and said, hey, man, we have this job we need somebody to do, and we don't have anybody on staff to do it. Can we hire you to do it? And I went, okay. And from that job came another job. And from that job came another job and another job and more contacts and more jobs and more, and all of a sudden I was making more money in 2 hours than I was making working 60 hours a week.
What was the nature of the business?
I helped politicians do things they couldn't do themselves.
What you scandal? You to fix it? What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm a fixer. No, I did all the little things that they really had no expertise at. They were people. I was a manager, and they were politicians. So they would throw a big event, and they would go, well, what do we need to do here? We need to print stuff, and we need to hire people, and we need to do direct. I did direct mail mostly. I wrote it.
That's a very expensive enterprise.
Yes, I wrote it. I produced it. I hired printers. I realized my big breakthrough was realizing that nobody wanted to deal with Democratic politicians. No vendors wanted to deal with Democratic politicians because they had a reputation for not paying their bills. So I went to I went to all the vendors and I said, if you deal with me and give me a discount on everything you do, I'll make sure you get paid every damn penny you're owed. And then I went to the politicians and I said, people make you pay for everything up front. But if you pay your bills in 60 days, not 30, 60 or even 90 days, I'll give you credit. And man, oh man, everybody wanted to do business with me because they didn't have to put the money out up front. They could wait till the proceeds came in from the direct mail before they paid me, and the vendors were happy to do business with me because they got paid. So
you found your niche.
Right.
You found the wiggle room. You made
right.
You identified a problem.
Right.
And you also identified a need, and you kind of finagled that.
I did, and I had some good luck along the way. I mean, you have to, and I got involved in doing some amazing projects that took a lot of work, and I had a reputation for getting things done. I remember one instance, for example, I did one of the first big things I ever did was an event called Hands Across America. I don't know if you remember this. Everybody was
by
supposed
name
to
only, so please.
Everybody was supposed to hold hands across America, and they did millions of dollars worth of printing, and they had all these big things involved with them. So the last thing they asked me to do, the day before the big event in Los Angeles, which is on all the TV stations and everything, they asked me to do credentials for the VIPs, and I do them. I get them done. I get all the vendors lined up, and then we FedEx them to them, and I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they tell me, unfortunately, Mr. Brown, the plane that was supposed to pick up your job in South Dakota was grounded, and there's no planes out until tomorrow. So your job's not going to get there on time. Well, the people in Los Angeles and Hollywood freaked out about it, and I got to the head of FedEx because they were one of the sponsors of the event, and we had just paid them $28,000 in shipping for stuff. And I said, man, you got to get it there. And the event, which was held at the Queen Mary, the pilot from the airplane brought the package to the event, and these people called me and they said, oh my God, we don't know what you did, man, but the pilot from the damn plane drove the box down from LA to wherever himself, you know, and I got a reputation. If you want to get it done,
it's a nice
come to me.
reputation to have.
Yeah. I never didn't get it done.
So
every time I got
tough question for you. What do you think is your greatest accomplishment in your capacity as U.S. Senator, and what do you think was your greatest defeat or obstacle?
Well, my greatest success has been that I think recently the House has put in legislation to abolish my office. And I think that's the greatest.
Now, who put this legislation up?
There was a congressman from Tennessee who...
Tennessee.
Yeah, who...
Yeah, the good old boys in Tennessee.
Yeah, good old boys, which is ironic because my office started in Tennessee under a thing called the Tennessee Plan. Oh, yeah? They were the first people...
Ku Klux Klan.
They were the first people to start having senators before they were elected. And the first guy was Andrew Jackson. The first guy they elected to my position was Andrew Jackson. So anyway, it's ironic that in Tennessee, this guy should put forth legislation. And the legislation says that it not only abolishes my office, but no money can ever be spent to elect senators. There can never be senators from the District of Columbia. And the Statehood Commission, which is where we get our little bit of funding, would have to be abolished. And I think that shows that these guys are feeling the heat from our office finally.
So you take it as a left-hand compliment, that this is a mark of a badge of honor, that this is
a badge of honor. They never cared about this office in the past. Now they want to get rid of it because they fear it. They fear that we actually might be able to accomplish what we set out to accomplish.
Now, this is what, for those who are say, oh, you know, statehood is not a big deal, or like, you know,
right.
You can vote. What, this is why it is a big deal, because someone can vote to change the laws governing this city and has no accountability, and the people in this city have no recourse to address that. I mean, how is this
tell you how to spend your money, tell you what your laws are, you know? So, do you know, let's, since we are where we are, let's just talk about marijuana for a second. We've legalized marijuana, but we can't tax it. We can't sell it. We can't, you know, it can only be given out in dispensaries. It can, you can give it a,
yes,
you know,
I-71 compliance.
You can't tax it because this is what Congress has said, you know? And the only reason it's legal is because they were asleep at the wheel, and they have 30 days to get rid of, to stand in the way of legislation, and they didn't do anything.
Maybe
so
because maybe because they was patronizing the dispensaries.
Maybe.
This has been Senator Michael Brown. Happy belated birthday. It was,
thank you.
August 5th. You're on your way to Chicago. What do you think you expect to see when you're in Chicago for the Democratic
I expect to
Convention?
see the greatest pep rally I've ever been to. You know, the thing that Joe Biden did not only was a great act of self-sacrifice, but it's energized the election so much. And that's what these things are about, you know. I disputed, and that was Carter's reelection. Ted Kennedy. Yeah, Ted Kennedy tried to get the nomination.
We got a moment. Say that footnote in history. I'm not familiar.
Well, Ted Kennedy tried to mount a campaign at the convention because, don't forget, you don't get the nomination actually until you're at the convention and the delegates nominate you and you accept it. Now, it's a technicality now because she has enough delegates to do that, okay? So she is the nominee. But ceremonially and technically it'll be done at the convention. So he comes to the convention with a bunch of people and tries to take the nomination away from Carter, and it failed. It failed and just didn't even go through one vote before it failed. But nobody's ever even tried that since. So what it's become is a great pep rally to get everybody energized, and this one's going to be the biggest of all of them, I predict.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, brothers, sisters, friends, and enemies, this has been U.S. Senator Michael Brown, who's been in office with us since 2007. He has been given of his time. He's been given of his expertise. He has donated so much resources to the issue of D.C. statehood, trying to lay the ground for a better representation here in this city and in this country, because I think it's a bit of hypocrisy for us to say that we're the home of democracy and we don't have it here in the nation's capital.
Surprises everybody. I'm about to go to an international conference in Brazil. I've been to several international conferences to speak on this, and it always flabbergasts people. They really have a hard time wrapping their mind around it. They go, well, what do you mean you don't have a vote? You're not. Isn't Washington the capital of the United States? Yes, it is. Isn't it where democracy is supposed to reside? Yes, it is. But, yeah. And you know what? Like I said earlier, this has all been payback for me. And this journey started because I was looking for something to do. I'd made enough money in life that I said to myself, you know what? I live in a nice house. I have enough money to put my kids through college. How much money do you need? So let me find something to do. And I was doing some research at the time, and I found out that I have a great-great-great-great-grandfather who fought in the Revolutionary War. And I said, gee, what would he think of me living in Washington, D.C., after he put his ass on the line, all his money, he was 17 years old and he went into the Army. What would he think of me just sitting around allowing this to happen in the District of Columbia without ever standing up and saying something? So I looked and I saw, what could I do, you know? And I saw that there was this office, and this office advocates, and I learned about it, and I said, wow. And I said, and I knew the guy, I knew of the other senator, and then when I looked into it, I found out, I said, oh my God, there's two of them? Whoever knew that there was another one? And she was a lovely lady named Florence Pendleton, and I decided to run against her. And then I was challenged by, or she was challenged by another person who was, well, I'm just going to campaign. I'll never win, you know, because people know this guy, nobody knows me. I won all 132 precincts. So from that, just, you know, was something. I did it for the experience. I did it because I thought it would be something positive to do, and it has been. It's been a great part of my life to actually stand up for 700,000 people who are among the best people in the country. I don't think people understand that about Washington.
Yeah, pay more taxes than most people in the country.
You know, they think we all work for the IRS, but actually we're more likely to work for a public interest group that makes your life better, for a group that deals with women or hungry children. Or these are all the groups. When I say I work for politicians, I made a lot of money at politicians, but I also work for the Food Research and Action Center to help hungry children. I also work for the Coalition to Ban the Death Penalty. I also work for the National Organization of Women. I also work, you know, I work for a lot of good groups in Washington. And there are 100 of them. I don't care what your issue is, there's somebody here in Washington working on it for you.
There's somebody in Washington working against us, too.
Yeah, there is somebody.
We got the good.
Sent in. They don't look
they're not Washington.
They're imported, those guys that are working against us.
Well, Michael D. Brown, Senator Brown, thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
He has his own program again on Shadow Politics on BBS Radio and WEAC Radio. You can catch Shadow
Proud
Politics.
to be on WEAC Radio.
Proud to have you. Shadow Politics can be heard on WEAC Radio each and every Monday at 4 p.m., Tuesdays at 11 a.m., and Thursdays at 6 p.m. And we will be carrying that show as an evergreen program even when you retire in January. Because we think that statehood is a lifelong struggle, and we hope to have that program running until we do finally achieve statehood.
It is. And, you know, much like Joe Biden, I got to tell you, at 71 years old, when I looked at another 6-year term, I said to myself, it's time to pick up this battle, and because it's going to take energy and effort to get it done, and it needs to get done. This is a political anachronism. It was never, the founding fathers would be astounded at this. They never meant for this to be the situation here. And all it is a partisan battle about getting 2 more Democrats in the United States Senate. That's all it has to do with. For us, it's a matter of freedom and justice. But for the Republicans, it's just a matter of keeping us out, keeping the door shut.
Well, I'm glad that 81-year-old Joe Biden somewhat agreed with your notion of passing the baton. I don't know where he feels on the statehood, and I hope that 87-year-old, 34-year incumbent Eleanor Holmes Norton felt the same as you and had the foresight to pass the baton. I want to thank you for
that's
being a
why I
leadership in
deal
that.
with people like you, Kimon, who are smart and caring and engaged, because that's what has to happen. We have to get those people in a position where they're making the changes in the world.
And the words of the great poet June Jordan, we are the ones we've been waiting for. This has been We Act Radio. Senator Michael Brown. We'll be back again with this incredible hero of mine, local hero here, unsung hero here, with the young man who seeks to fill his shoes in the general election if he's successful, as I seek to be successful. We'll be right back with more from U.S. Senator Michael Brown. Happy birthday.
All right, thanks.
All right, Don.
We're good?
Thank you.